So it's been a while and I've tried to avoid it, but I've made a build video for every class now, whether the last patch or this patch. So now I've got to make a Necromancer video. Now, Necros are a really powerful class, and next patch when the DK gets nerfed into the ground, the DK will probably get usurped by the Necro as like the new king of comp. But when I first started playing this game, I was a Necro main for a year, and I'm sick of
I
it.
don't want to play with you anymore.
So there we are. This setup I hit 121k on the dummy with. There are people that have hit like mid to high 120s with this, and with some stamina changes you can hit 130. But this is a setup I use in content. This will get changed by next patch. I will have to re-release this video, but best to get it out. So we're going to go through all the build, all the setup, all the CP points, everything you need to hit the damage. So I can get this done and not have to make a Necromancer video again for a while because I hate it so much. But there we are, and here we go. So let's take a look at the gear and basic setup and that. So we have got 64 points into Magicka. Using the Thief Mundus stone, and we're using the crunchy Spider Skewer food, because this gives us max Magicka and stamina recovery to allow us to keep casting one of our stamina skills. We're using kinras on the front bar with Nirnhoned in charge to poison the flame enchant. Backbar is the maelstrom greatsword with a berserker enchant on it in Infused. All of our jewellery is bloodthirsty with spell damage enchants on it. And then we're using perfected Relequens on the body. It doesn't have to be perfected, you literally gain nothing but an extra line of stam, so normal Relequens will be fine. All divines with mag enchant. We're using slimecraw for the monster set because we have a built-in penetration passive, so we don't need to use Valkin and haven't got to worry about that. The harpoon is wading kilt as well, as always, with the Magicka enchant in divines for the crit damage and crit chance. We are a dark elf because it's my favourite class pretty much, because I like the max mag and stam and the weapon and spell damage. For if we need to alternate between mag and stam. But you could also use a high elf or if you want to be really bougie, a Khajiit, but then you'd have to think about your crit damage cap. Worth noting, like I say, I've got 64 points into Magicka here, but you can change like one skill and go 64 points into stam instead. You change your food to flat stam food or maybe stam and mag recovery if you needed it. And what you do is you just swap out rune on your backbar for caltrops instead. And then that's a setup I've seen hit like 130k, but we're using the predominantly mag one because I just think that's a bit better in content, but that's just something that there is possible, and to bear in mind. I might do a later video on it, just to show like the potential of the Stamcrow on this patch basically. So let's take a look at the skills that we're going to use on the Dots Crow rotations. This is what we'd use on the dummy, and in just general content where you can just go full damage every time. So on the front bar we've got Barbed Trap, which is our source of minor force. Deadly Cloak, which we're using to take advantage of the daggers on the front bar to get our powerful dot, and also the major evasion in combat to make us a bit less dead if there's lots of AoEs about. Detonating Siphon gives us a damage buff just for being on the bar and does loads of disease damage. Just make sure you're not casting this when you're about to refresh boneyard, because obviously you don't want to consume the corpse that boneyard would use for the damage buff. Speaking of boneyard, using avid boneyard here. In content you'd use it on nerving, but avid boneyard just lets us take our own synergy, does a lot of frost damage, and we get that pop when we use the synergy for a bit of extra upfront burst as well from the skill. We've got stalking blastbones. You're going to cast this every 2 skills, so blastbones, skill, blastbones, skill. The further away you are, the more damage it does, which is why we tend to start the fight a bit further away if we can, and then try and get a bit of distance between us to like the limit of what you can cast trap. Dawnbreaker is just there for the weapon and spell damage passive. We don't actually use it. Stampede to make use of the maelstrom greatsword's bleed, and it's a good little gap closer as well, and a powerful dot. Carve, this obviously got changed as I mentioned in a couple of other videos where stacks don't increase damage anymore, they increase duration. So the sooner we get this up to 2-3 stacks, the sooner we can leave it alone and forget about it, which was a bonus. Mr. Corb, great in content for that bit of cleave. It just sort of floats by, doing ticks of damage, minding its own business, burning everything that it goes past. And we can use obviously the synergy as well for a bit of extra pop in content. You definitely want to be running this. Scalding Rune makes use of the major skill passives. It's a bit of a semi-spammable if we haven't got a dot that needs replacing. But the timer does tend to be crap when you're doing passes. So we can see here, when you've not hit something with it, yeah, wicked, the timer works and it will just count down all the way. But the second it pops, if I hit the dummy with it here, timer gets mangled up for some reason, just disappears. So just something to bear in mind with the dynamic rotation. You can replace this with anti-cav count drops. I've not morphed it because I'm crap, but anti-cav count drops are decent damage as well. Skeletal Archer does more damage than the Mag one now. Sits there minding his own business, makes use of the passives to give us extra recovery. And then as our ultimate, we have Shooting Star. You can replace this with Colossus if you're on vulnerability duty, but if you've got Turning Tide in group and vulnerability sorted, Shooting Star, go ham, have fun. Powerful Dart if you can get things to stay in the area. So let's just take a quick look at some of the passives that we make use of on the dot crate, so I'll make it work. So in the Gravelord skill line, we've got the extra recovery that we get from every time we cast one of our pets. The Death Knell passive, which gives us critical strike in execute range for every ability we've got slotted. Now we've got loads of these on the front bar, so we get loads and loads and loads of extra critical chance in execute, extra penetration, and extra damage done with our dot abilities. Our Bone Tyrant ones only really matter if we're running necrotic potency, which you'll run in trash in like optimized groups, but none of those really matter too much. That last one for extra max health, that can come in handy, but as you can see, I've not even leveled that yet. None of these really matter unless you're running a self heal, so if you're running resistant flesh in like VCR portals or something, but the reanimate ultimate can come in handy if you've got prog groups, for example, that can't stop being big dead. In two hand, you want these two passives here. And for dual wield, you basically want all of them except for Ruffian. Light armor, you want all of those. And medium armor, you want dexterity, windwalker, and agility. For all the passives in there. Fighters Guild, you want all of the passives we got listed there. All of your Mages Guild passives, so that we get our sort of cost reduction to our abilities, our extra duration that make the dots last a bit longer, our extra Magicka recovery, and then obviously our empower every time we cast Shooting Star or Rune. Both Undaunted passives, all your racial passives, and obviously your medicinal use passive out of alchemy as well to make your pots last longer and to give you the full duration on your buff. In Assault, you also might want to run continuous attack for the extra mount speed as well. It's like a nice to have, it's not super important really. So in terms of champion points, these will change next sort of patch when some of the new ones come in, but for now we've got Rationer and Liquid Efficiency that I always recommend in the green tree to make your food and pot build cheaper. Master at Arms, Bite and Aura, Thaumaturge and Backstabber for our blue tree. And for our red tree, again depending on the content, but normally I'd brace an anchor on here because I was running Shield of the North the other day, but Balance, Vitality, Fortified and Rejuvenation for definite. So this is the 121k pass that we hit. So to pre-buff, we're hitting Arcanist, Deadly Cloak, and basically lobbing everything that doesn't hit the boss straight away. So Orb, Rune, Blastbones, and we Stampede in. Hit our Blastbones again because as the Stampede hits, our Blastbones should have gone off. And then we start hitting all our dots. We're keeping them all up dynamically, which I'm not going to lie, is not the easiest rotation in the world. Because we've got so many dots to keep up, we do have to sort of keep it to a priority. So generally speaking, you want to keep boneyard up as much as you can. Carve is like the top of the list. So if we go top to bottom, it's probably carve, boneyard, stampede, trap, deadly cloak, orb, etc, etc, etc as we go down. Definitely don't let your carve stacks drop. You want to end up to 3 as quick as you can to give you a sort of bit of breathing room for an extra dot you haven't got to think about really. But you are going to end up with some that sort of do run out, but it's better to let them run out for a second than it is to sort of reapply them early. So if you're in like a nice position where you've not got a dot to reapply, then I'd start hitting siphons or runes, depending on obviously how your resources are looking. And that is my Magicka Necromancer video. I've been making this video, for no exaggeration, about 3 weeks. Not because it took me ages to make, because I kept and ahhing about whether to release it or not. Because the new patch is literally right around the corner, and a lot of this is probably going to get subverted, and I'm going to have to make it again. But it's been a little while since I made a video, so I thought I'd release this one dead quick. This will get remade when the new patch comes out, basically. It'll probably be the first one I do, because Necro will be the dominant DD. So do keep an eye out for that.